how to install a Road Glide fairing top, a full one-piece fairing top. You want to make sure everything's good and clean. No bugs, obviously. Clean everything really well. You want to keep everything really wet with your soap slip solution. Want your hands wet. Go ahead when you get the pattern piece, you want to lay it on, make sure that you see exactly how it lays onto the fairing. And then you want to, as you remove this, keep it very wet with soap. So you peel it back, spray it, because on the underside of this is an adhesive. So when you lift it up, there's an adhesive, which you don't want dust sticking to that before you get it on the bike. So keeping it wet will keep the dust off of it and allow the dust to wash off of it. Plus, if this happens to touch anything while it's wet, it's okay. The stuff will wash off, but you don't want it touching anything dry. You don't want dry fingers on it. You definitely don't want it folding over onto itself when it's dry. So we'll go ahead and pull it off. Give it a good spray out here. So now I'm just soaping it, and the wetter the better. You really want this thing to get soapy and wet. And go ahead and make sure the fairing and the material is good and wet. And just lay it on there. Okay. Now, first thing you're going to do is start with this center section here. So you want to slide it up. And you'll see it'll kind of be equal distance from each side. Don't worry about these side wings yet. Again, we're just focusing on this this rectangular section. So just using your hands, you just want to kind of lay it down. And you'll look at these little grooves. And if it's not slipping, make sure you just keep giving it some soap. You want a good layer of soap underneath there. And you want this edge to be under this lip, not up here where the bolts are for your windshield. You want it equal distance, everything to be equal from side to side. Again, you just want it barely under these little raised lips. And when you've got it where you want it, spray the top so that your squeegee will slide easier. And you go ahead and start squeegeeing out that liquid using overlapping strokes so you don't trap anything. And I'm just using really light pressure. If you find whenever you're squeegeeing the material, if it's sliding a lot, you have too much soap in your mixture. But at this point, just lightly squeegeeing it, and it's pretty much tacked down. And again, I'm just kind of almost using the weight of the squeegee at this point. And just pulling everything down. Again, we're just focusing on this section here. So now in these corners, I'm pressing a little harder so the squeegee will bend into that area. So then I'll go ahead and give it another spray and use a little more aggressive strokes. Get everything out. So that center piece is on there good. And we'll worry about these down here in a minute, okay? Don't worry about those right this second. Okay, now we're gonna move out to one of these side wings. Now what we wanna do is go ahead with the soap again, make sure everything's wet. We're gonna lift it and spray some soap underneath, but you wanna make sure the edges are wet. You don't wanna draw in any dust in the room or wherever your garage that you're installing this. You want to make sure that you don't have a lot of airflow and dust flying around. Now we're just kind of going up over this little edge so that's all tacked down there. Okay. Now for you, it'll be a little easier. What I'm needing to do, we have these fingers. What these are called are fingers, and we need to get rid of those. So the way to do that is by pulling. So when we stretch the material, you'll see those disappear, okay? Now on the bike, it's a little easier to do than me here on a tabletop, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So go ahead, make sure everything's wet again underneath. You wanted to make sure, even in this area, it's not a bad idea to have the alcohol mixture just a little bit here and underneath here. And what that's gonna do is make sure that that locks down. Because when we pull on this tip out here, we don't want it lifting this up off the valley. We don't want the tension to pull that off the valley there. We want to make sure that that's laid down, you know, a good inch away from the valley there, okay? Now we're gonna come out here. If this is still slipping, if not, we can put a little more soap again. Now to anchor this, again, we're going to anchor this and stretch it at the same time. To do so, you need the alcohol spray out here. So we're gonna wash the soap off the fairing as well as off the back of the material there, a good 2 inches of that tip. So now when we pull this out to this point and set it, it's not gonna release. With soap, it would just release, okay? So again, alcohol out there, and you'll see these will disappear. So as I pull it out, and you wanna keep this top running along that edge there, okay? So you don't want this top line down here up into here. You wanna make sure that it's riding right under that little groove. And we can go ahead and put a little alcohol up there too if we want to position that and tack it. So now those spots are not gonna move. So go ahead and squeegee out the alcohol in those 2 spots. So now we're tacked out here, we're tacked here, so it's just a matter of getting all this soap out from underneath this. So we'll spray the top again, so it's good and wet, and then you start chasing the liquid and soap away from where you have it anchored, okay? Because wherever you have it anchored, you can't run soap back through that. It's like a wall. So same thing out here on the tip, there's a wall right here because I put alcohol. So we couldn't run something into that. So we want to run away from there. And I can see that something got some, something snuck in there, some dirt. But again, being that it's all wet, I can get that right off. You just wipe it. You don't want to use aggressive fingernail and just kind of rubbing out those little pieces of something. Probably came from the back of the fairing here. It's a problem with taking it off. Everything behind the fairing here is pretty messy, but I can show you again how we stretch that. So we're stretching it out to a point, you know, about a 1/4 inch or near that edge there. So again, there we go. So now that's tacked. So again, back to, we're gonna get all this soap out of here, soapy water. We're gonna run away from where it's anchored. And then we'll go ahead and kind of get this top section so we can run all that up. Go ahead and do the same thing and run down. We'll kind of make sure an overlapping strokes again. So you want to start up in where you know you've squeegeed it and come over this edge. That way you're not going to trap anything on that edge. And I see there's a little speck of that whatever we had a minute ago. So again, I can just reach up and with the soapy water, just kind of lightly rubbing that. Make sure that there's soap. Whatever you lifted it, make sure it has soap back up underneath there. So that is all rinsed now, clean. I'm getting everything squeegeed out. Okay. So now, pretty much all the flat surface is done. Now the thing is you have these little fingers along the edge. So we're gonna go back to the alcohol mixture, okay? And really, anywhere on this edge, this lower edge, that you have those, you're just gonna spray some of the alcohol. We'll work on this section first. Again, that alcohol is gonna wash out the soap and allow the adhesive to tack to the fairings. And then you just slowly push those out. And where there's a big one, when you push it, you'll see it turns into kind of smaller ones. Just take your time, moving along. Again, starting where you know you've already squeegeed so that you're not leaving anything behind, because we're building a wall kind of right here of that alcohol. Okay. And this edge is all looking pretty good. Again, we kind of have this little area here. And so this side of the wing is pretty much done. So what we're gonna do is take a dry towel, wipe it down. As you're wiping it down, you wanna make sure and go the same way you were going with your squeegee. So you wanna kind of squeegee away from the center out, or along the edges. You never wanna go towards this edge, because you could lift it and get the microfiber under into the adhesive where some of the fibers would attach to it. So you just always wanna, again, kind of run it out like you would a squeegee, pressing any little fingers. As these fingers, like we have a little teeny one right here. Again, just start, if you can see that, start right here and just push it down. Now that side's done. If you have any moisture, where you'll see a bump of moisture, leave it, it will dissipate out after a few days in the sun. If there's white specks, that would be air, those will not disappear. So you would want, if you found a big blob of air, you would want to lift it, spray soapy water back up under there, and squeegee it out, and kind of repeat the process that we did over the past few minutes. Now we're just gonna do the centerpiece. And same thing, we're spraying some alcohol under this lip. And then we're gonna do that same process. We're just gonna come down, moving along the edge here. Kind of the first thing I'm doing is making sure that everything is out up to the edge. Now we'll go ahead and give it another shot of alcohol mixture. And you'll see, and then as we roll it around the corner, that will tack down. And when you get to these little edges, and you just kind of move it around, move it out to these little points, as you'll see over here on this side. You have kind of a bit of that, those fingers there. So if you can imagine, you want to run everything out kind of to this point, because that point can stretch a little bit. So you start here, and then move it out to this final little point here. And again, you can use that dry towel, go in the same direction you were with the squeegee, and lay all those little areas down. If you find anything, that's a little bubble. Find any bubbles, you can also try to move them. You could switch the squeegee to the back side and use the heavy side, and sometimes chase them out that way, because then you got more ability to force it out. And that is basically it. Now I can go ahead and do this side just to show you again. So we'll repeat on here. So again, we're just gonna get it wet. Bring it back in there. And again, we wanna make sure this is all laid down nicely. Even a little alcohol right there, and a little alcohol right here to anchor that, so when we stretch it out, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay. And then again, we're going to do that stretch process. So again, making sure this is good and soapy. We're going to use the alcohol out here on the edges. So we're going to make sure that piece of fairing is alcoholed, and this little ear. And then kind of same process. We're going to pull this thing out. Actually, I put a little alcohol up there too. Stand up. So again, you're going to want to kind of line this up here to where you want it to go. And then do the same with the bottom. Try and do this without blocking your view here. There we go. And then I'm pressing with my thumb, and it tacks down, so it won't spring back with that alcohol there. So once again, we're anchored here, and we're anchored up front, and now it's a matter of squeegeeing away from those anchor zones. And just moving all that soapy water out. So again, we got to come this way from this anchor zone and come down over that edge. Again, you want to make sure that top is wet with the soapy mixture so that this squeegee slides really nicely. So that looks great. And now for the final step, a little alcohol under this edge to lock that thing down. Again, we're just going to take and run all the way along that. A little more alcohol right here. Okay, and the dry towel. Again, running it up, using it like a squeegee almost to press out anything. And these little finger like right there, just go ahead and press that down. And again, let it set in the sun, let it cure up for a couple days. At this point, it's good to go. If you have edges that won't lay down if it's colder out, you can use a heat gun just to warm. You don't want to heat the material, melt it, keep it at a safe distance. But just drying it out is really what you would use a heat gun to do to any of these edges. And then they'll lay right down. Or again, set it out in the sun for a little bit. If you see any fogging, you can kind of see a little bit just because where we squeegeed. Some places a little harder, so there's a little bit of moisture underneath. That will dissipate out as well. So just leave it alone for a couple days. Let it dissipate out. Any little teeny liquid bubbles will dissipate out. Just the dust, hairs, or air bubbles would be really the only thing that you're concerned with right now. If there's a big air pocket, then you would want to lift it, spray under, squeegee it out, and finish it off. So with that, you're good. You protected your road glide fairing.